Hi, this is Professor Tyler Watts from Ferris State University.
And in this video, I'm going to show you how to run a Lego car market in your classroom to demonstrate what happens in a competitive market situation in a fun, hands-on, engaging way for your students. The activity is a classroom simulation of the market process where we're going to have entrepreneurs creating and selling products and consumers purchasing them. Students will be playing for real money as either producers or consumers of Lego cars. In the process, students will observe how competition drives businesses' profits down and increases consumer surplus. The materials needed are Lego car parts, and you can have students build whatever kind of Lego car you want. I found that this following car is pretty simple, and it has components that are readily available from various Lego websites. 7 components here consists of a chassis or frame and fenders, 2 axles, a front and rear with headlights and taillights, 2 doors, a windshield, and a seat/steering wheel that you can have clipped together. You want enough parts so there's about 1 car per student, and students may well build more than 1 car per student. The parts can be recycled in the course of the activity, and cars can be built multiple times. So even if you don't have enough parts for 1 car per student, if you only have enough parts for 10 or 15 cars, you'll be able to run the activity. It might just take a little bit longer. If you don't know where to go to acquire large lots of Lego parts, email me and I can help you out with that. Okay, now we also need some money. This activity does cost the instructor a little bit, but in my experience, it's well worth it because it's a very good demonstration of the competitive market process. And I always start with $1 for every student. I put that in an envelope. Dollar bills or dollar coins, quarters, small change is helpful to allow students to do transactions at less than whole dollar increments. I usually have more envelopes on hand than students in the class because, as you'll see in a minute, students will be able to play multiple rounds, especially on the consumer side. Then you'll need small change to help students make transactions in less than dollar amounts. And finally, I recommend having an overhead projector with Excel. That just allows you to easily tabulate and display results of the activity, although it is possible to do it by hand on a chalkboard or whiteboard. I have an Excel file template for the activity, and I'm happy to share that with you. Or you can create your own fairly simply. Setup. First, we want to establish the parts market on a table at the front of the room, and this is run by a salaried student assistant. So I'll pick one student at the beginning of the activity and say, who wants to earn a guaranteed $2? Usually an offer of a guaranteed $2 salary will attract several students, so I pick a student to be my assistant and run the parts market. And here's a picture of what that parts market looks like. We've broken up the car into all of its component parts, and the student assistant will be responsible for selling those parts to entrepreneurs who will then assemble them and then sell completed cars. The student assistant will also be responsible for making change to both entrepreneurs who are buying car components and to consumers who might need to make change to purchase a car for less than $1. Once you've got the parts market set up and your student assistant in place, you select one student to be the first entrepreneur and supply that student with an envelope containing $1. Every other student will be a consumer, and they will each get an envelope containing $1 to use in purchasing a car. Okay, so every student set up with his or her envelope. One's a student assistant, one's an entrepreneur, going to buy parts and sell cars. Everyone else is a consumer, going to attempt to purchase a car. Now we're ready to lay out the procedure. Start by introducing the activity along these lines. And I'll tell the students, today you have a chance to make money buying or selling cars. And technically, what's going on is the entrepreneurs will be able to earn profit by purchasing components and then selling a completed car. And of course, the difference between cost and sales price is their profits, and they'll get to keep that. And buyers will be able to gain consumer surplus if they get a car at a good deal, which is a price below their maximum willingness to pay. And be sure to stress that we're using real money. The students will already see that in their envelopes, so they have an incentive to try for the best possible deal. Next, I need to give specific instructions to my entrepreneur. Now we're starting with one entrepreneur. We're going to add entrepreneurs as the activity progresses. So these will be applicable to anyone who becomes an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs get an envelope with $1, which is their startup capital, provided by you, the instructor. And what they have to do is go buy the component parts from the parts market, assemble the car, and then try to sell it to any of the fellow students who are consumers. If the entrepreneur sells the car for more than his or her costs, they'll earn a profit. And at the end of class, they just give me the initial $1 back, plus interest or dividend if you so choose. You can say, I'm the bank and you have to pay me 10 cents on that dollar, 10% interest on your loan, or you could ask for a dividend, a percent of profits. That's really up to instructor discretion. It's not technically necessary. It's just a little business wrinkle you can throw in. And the rest of the money in the envelope is your total profits. If the entrepreneur student winds up with $5 in his envelope, he gives me the dollar back and he's earned $4 for the day, and that's his to keep. Now, likewise, consumers. Specific instructions. You each have an envelope with $1. This is what we'll call your car budget. This is the maximum amount you can spend on a car. And here's the incentive to get them engaged and to get them trying to buy a car. If they buy a car for less than that $1, they earn the difference, which is the consumer surplus. So for example, if a student buys a car for 80 cents, he's going to earn the 20 cents surplus that transaction created, assuming his maximum price he was willing to pay was $1. Now, in order to give these consumer students opportunities to earn more money, I'll allow them to return their car they just bought and their empty consumer envelope to me. And I'll take the car, break the parts up, put it back in the car parts market, and I'll give them a brand new envelope with $1 in it so they can start over as a new consumer and try to earn some more consumer surplus. And there's no limit to how many cars a student consumer can buy. It's only going to be limited by the amount of time in your class or the amount of time you choose to run the activity for. Okay, so I've set up the entrepreneurs and consumers with their envelopes and detailed instructions. Now I give final instructions to everybody. Once a seller and buyer agree on a price, so once two students have agreed, I'll buy a car from you for this much money, they have to come up to me, the instructor, at the front of the room. I'm going to record each transaction, the price paid. I'm going to verify the car meets requirement. Entrepreneurs are then free to continue producing and selling, reinvesting their profits. And consumers may start again, as we've mentioned, by turning in their car, an empty envelope, and getting a new envelope, starting over as a brand new consumer. And the student assistant's responsible for both selling parts to entrepreneurs and collecting payments for those parts and providing small change to people as needed to help them make transactions. You may be wondering how much money is required to operate the activity. Not a whole lot, and what you'll do is recycle money from the parts market. As entrepreneurs keep buying parts, your student assistant will be collecting income, and periodically you'll be able to simply take the income made in the parts market, replenish the consumer envelope. And depending on how many parts you have, you'll probably need to recycle completed cars back into the parts market. And your student assistant can help you with that. If you have a large class, you may want two student assistants, one to strictly run the car parts market, and then one to help you recycle cars back to the parts market, recycle money back into the envelopes. I have found in running this in my classes that you need about $1 per student. So if you have 30 students, bring $30, and between recycling the money from the parts market back into the envelopes, you'll be able to keep students going for an hour class period. And I'll note here that in my experiences with classes of about 30 students, my net cost has been somewhere in the order of $20 to $30. In other words, I started the day as an instructor with $30. I went home with maybe 5 or 10, and the remainder was student earnings. So there's a bit of a monetary cost to this activity, but as I've mentioned, I have found it's very worthwhile because nothing motivates students to participate like the prospect of earning some actual money, even if it's only $1 or $2. Okay, now some notes for the instructors. The point of this activity is to make the market more and more competitive and observe what happens to price. What we want to do is allow that first entrepreneur, who's effectively a monopolist, to have several sales before we add additional entrepreneurs and make the market more and more competitive. So I recommend the following sequence. Let the first seller get 5 or so sales before you add the second seller in. Then let 10 more sales happen between the first and second seller. And then let another 10 or so more sales happen between the first, second, and third seller, so on and so forth. And you can go to 4, 5, 6 sellers, depending on how much time you have, depending on how much student interest there is in being entrepreneurs. In my experience, there's been several students who will want to be entrepreneurs, especially after they see the profits being earned by the first entrepreneur. So I'll run the activity as long as my money holds out, as long as my stockpile of Legos holds out, or until I run out of class time. And bear in mind that you will want to save probably about 5 or 10 minutes towards the end of class to summarize results and show the students the data. Make sure to track every sale on the board and or in the Excel file. It's a little more streamlined to do it in the Excel file because you'll be able to automatically calculate moving average, and then charting the price sequence will be done for you automatically. And at the end of the class, when we have our discussion and review period, we'll display that graph of the price data. Students will be able to clearly see the downward trend in price generated by the increased competition as the activity progressed and we added more and more entrepreneurs. Now let's take a look at some clips from actual classroom running of the Lego car market to get a feel for how it works. Okay, remember, when you buy, come see me, tell me the price, give me the car and your envelope, and I'll start you fresh. Okay, now who's going to be my entrepreneur? And the only way you can earn money is by buying. You can't just keep the dollar. I'm going to pull that back. So if you don't buy, you fail. If you buy, remember you're earning the consumer surplus. The difference, you can pay up to $1. Of course, if you pay $1, there's no consumer surplus. So what kind of price do you want as a buyer? Lowest possible price.
$1. All I have.
I already gave you $1 every first car, so can I keep 75 cents?
I heard some people saying is there only going to be one producer?
Don't make more producers.
Well, okay, who else wants to maybe do
I'll
it?
make producer.
Joe, I saw your hand first. I'll put you in next in line. So here's the deal. You have to come and swap your consumer envelope for a producer envelope. And the same rule applies for you. At the end of the day, I'm going to ask for my startup capital back with interest, but everything else is your earnings.
Okay, I'll pay 75 cents. 85. 92. 92. 95. 90.
95 and 92.
96. 99. Anybody want to buy a car? 80. 80. Where? 85? That's 12.
And your car has to be a legal car. It has to have headlights, taillights, doors, windshield, and a seat. To be an entrepreneur. Come on, I want one more.
85.
I got 2 cars.
For your business.
75. 75.
Here, I'll take anything. 75. 69. 65. 69. 72 cents. 70.
Going back from everybody.
Okay, your 5 cents is right here.
If you bought, I need an empty envelope in the car. If you didn't buy, I need your full envelope.
How much did you make?
I made $3. Paying everybody equally. I wanted everyone got $3.
So the results are pretty straightforward and the discussion is pretty straightforward, but I'll break this into 3 components that I want to stress when reviewing what we observed and learned in this activity. First off, simply ask the students what trend we observed in car prices as the activity went on. And there will be a clear, obvious downtrend, as you can see in the graph of car prices generated by the Excel spreadsheet. So here we're looking at the actual results in Excel from having run this in a few microeconomics classes. These are the actual prices we observed. And I do a 3-period moving average, which is just the average of the previous 3 prices, and then fill that formula down. And that gives us a little bit of a smooth trend. The graph right here, which is of the moving average, shows a nice downward trend as I added entrepreneurs. So you can see after 6 cars were sold, I added a second entrepreneur. After 14 cars were sold, we added a third entrepreneur, and so on, down to where we had 5 entrepreneurs in the game by the end. And that brought steady downward pressure on the price, and the moving average is approaching something like 60 cents, which is pretty minimal profits per car. Components in this instance cost 50 cents. We see clearly that profits are being squeezed through competition. Here's a class that was done later. Same things going on here. Charted all the actual prices. We had a total of 89 transactions in this class. A big class, very active. 6 entrepreneurs by the end. And very strong downtrend when we're charting the moving average right here, or whether we're just charting the actual sequence. In this chart here, we've actually fitted a trend line in Excel, and we can see that that trend is strongly downward. Next, we want to predict. If we kept on doing this activity ad infinitum, where would prices ultimately wind up? Where would they settle? And the students will basically be able to predict that prices are going to converge down to the level of costs, or pretty close to the level of costs. And then depending on how much you want to get into it, you can take your students into a discussion of the basic theory of competitive markets and long-run equilibrium, where price converges to cost, profits are eliminated. And we could talk about, well, are firms still earning accounting profits and covering costs of capital, covering the cost of interest on capital, and maybe earning no economic profits. Of course, that's up to instructors' discretion, depending on whether you want to get into that level of analysis. The ultimate takeaway is that prices are declining, and that's making profits ultimately go away. And then finally, we can generalize from what we observed in this simple classroom market to the reality of competitive markets in the world. Competition eliminates profits in the long run. We probably want to move on to discuss the fact that entrepreneurs strive to continue earning profits, and in the real world, we do see businesses that are continuously profitable. Apple might be a really good example of that. A company that's been consistently profitable year after year after year. Of course, there's no guarantee that that will continue. And then we can get into a discussion of, well, what do entrepreneurs have to do if they want to earn profits to begin with and then maintain them in the face of competitive pressure? In my experience, students will want to do this with their cars. They want to build them in a different way, make the cars different, improve on them in some way, although we've pretty much constrained the car to be a commodity in this instance, just to keep things simple. But students will ultimately come up with this. The idea is innovation. To continually earn profits and to avoid that tendency for profits to be eliminated through competition, you have to innovate. And that can be on the product side, coming up with a new improved product. And in my classes, I talk extensively in other lectures about innovation in the auto industry. I've actually done car shows out in the parking lot with cars going back to the Model T, and we can observe the tremendous improvements that have come about in every aspect of automobiles. Safety features, brakes, horsepower, seat belts, airbags, convenience features, radios, CD player, MP3 player, Bluetooth, GPS, performance, miles per gallon. So there's so many things, and cars just keep on getting better. Now, why is that? That's because the auto industry is a really competitive industry. It's a worldwide competitive industry. So the only way to try to keep on earning profits is to keep on improving the product. So students hopefully will be able to connect with that because they can see the results, and they see that competition, they see the advertisements. And that's a product that they're very familiar with. What they might be a little bit less familiar with is the process innovation, the idea of improving the production process to become more efficient. But you could relate to things like Henry Ford perfecting the assembly line, and modern auto companies utilizing high-tech production lines with a lot of robotic assembly procedures and other process management. So again, it's kind of up to your discretion about how much detail you want to go into, but we do want to relate the concept of competition eliminating profits to the result of that in a competitive world, which is that competition is driving innovation in both product and process. And then the ultimate lesson is that innovation is going to benefit consumers with better products and lower prices. And businesses may or may not continue to keep earning profits. Some businesses will be successful, others will go by the wayside and fail, but the process will generate continuous innovation, continuous improvement, continuously lower costs, and that's a win in the long run for the consumers, which is all of us. So let's summarize. LEGO Car Market demonstrates these essential principles of the market process. Competition reduces and tends to eliminate profits in the long run, and competition drives innovation. Both of these factors benefit consumers, and the competitive market system harnesses self-interest, entrepreneurs strictly trying to make profits, for social benefit. They make profits by coming up with newer, better products and lower cost production methods. So there you have it, the LEGO Car Market. It's fun, it's interactive, it teaches core microeconomics principles in a hands-on, intuitive manner. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you're inspired to use this in your own classroom. I know it's a little bit costly, but it's a lot of fun, and I think it's well worth it. Please email me if you have any questions or need some help setting it up. And please also check out my other classroom activity videos and other economics lectures and feature videos on our YouTube channel to get updates about these kind of videos and resources that can help you teach and or learn economics.